In My Hero Academia chapter 259, it was revealed that Dr. Ujiko's real name is Shiga Maruta. I did a video on this, a chapter review, and it did great. But a lot has happened since then. As with any My Hero Academia controversy, Twitter outrage is in full swing. But I'm here to tell you that some of that outrage is actually called for and justified. So today I'd like to explain the whole controversy behind Shiga Maruta, why people are so up in arms about it, and really what we can learn from this moving forward. Before we begin, I'd just like to say that this video is not happy-go-lucky, so if that's not your thing, I totally get it, feel free to click away. But if you are sticking around, we will be talking about some very sensitive topics, and in regards to that, I'd like to ask everyone to like, comment your thoughts below on this controversy, which we'll get into, and I'll ask you guys a few questions, and share this video on social media. The reason I'm saying this is, due to the nature of these sensitive topics, I fully expect that this video might get demonetized. And I'm not doing it for the money, it's just when a video gets demonetized by YouTube, it throttles the views, and people can't watch this or even discover it, and that's why I'm really doing this. I want people to be discussing this issue and seeing this video. So if you do Truth Hero a solid and like, comment your thoughts as always, because this is a huge controversy, and of course share it with a fellow My Hero Academia stan. So with that, let's get into the video. First, let me set up the whole controversy so everyone's on the same page. Dr. Ujiko's real name is Shiga Maruta. Now Shiga is fine, it's like Shigaraki, and it comes from All for One since his superiors usually get his real name, which is Shigaraki. The controversy is Maruta here. Maruta is a Japanese term meaning log, and it was used by the Japanese army to refer to people they conducted experiments on. In essence, it means guinea pig. Now, for those of you who don't know, in World War II, Japanese Army Unit 731 conducted covert biological and chemical experiments on Chinese and Korean people. It's honestly one of the most terrifying and tragic histories I've ever learned about. It's almost inconceivable that a human being could act that way towards another one, and I'll leave it at that. You guys can look it up. Believe me, it is not for the faint of heart, but I do encourage you guys to learn the truth about it. The problem with these particular war crimes is that Japan has never formally apologized to China and Korea for doing that to its citizens, as well as other things in World War II like what happened in Nanjing, which again, for those uninitiated, look that up as well. It's equally disturbing. Before I give my thoughts on this, let's first go over what Horikoshi said in response to the understandable backlash concerning this character. Horikoshi took to Twitter to apologize for the incident right after it happened, and we have the translation from Audrey, who is the #1 fangirl of My Hero Academia, and credits to her for doing this because we really get quick translations of everything Horikoshi puts out. So, she translated the apology and it said, "Many have pointed out that the character named Shiga Maruta in this week's Jump character has brought up recollections of acts done in the past. I did not intend for the name to be associated as such. I take this matter very seriously and will change the name." She also noted that some of the nuance of his apology is lost in the translation from Japanese to English because we don't really have the same words to express sincerity. I do believe Horikoshi is sincere in his apology. I mean, he's been sincere over far less and really tried to apologize and appease people for their fake outrage that really don't deserve it. So he's good on that one. But do I believe it was an accident that this character was named Shiga Maruta? I don't know, and this might be where I get into some hot water with you guys. And yes, Maruta is a very common name in Japanese. If you Google it, a bunch of companies will come up. But as we know, Horikoshi does like to name his characters very specific things in regards to comics and history. So I don't want to sort of blame him, but at the same time, I'm unsure. So Shiga Maruta. Shiga is from Shigaraki, as All for One's name is Shigaraki, and he is Dr. Ujiko's superior. And Maruta is actually a play on the word Daruma in Japanese kana. It's kind of a reverse of it, which is a reference to Dr. Ujiko being round and pudgy like a Daruma doll, kind of like Darumaka the Pokemon is a reference to that as well. On the flip side though, Dr. Ujiko does experiments on humans with quirks and turns them into Nomu and mindless creatures and treats them as Maruta. So Horikoshi and his staff not seeing the historical connection between naming a doctor that does that, Maruta, is very insensitive and at the least very inattentive. It's almost impossible not to see that if you're putting such a focus on naming your characters very specific things. So, at the very least, I do believe the apology, but it's definitely a pretty bad mistake. It's just kind of one of those things like, Horikoshi said he's never seen Avatar, yet we have a carbon copy of Prince Zuko in Shoto, just with ice powers, and Fire Lord Ozai in Endeavor, who might get redemption instead of his firebending taken away. Regardless of this though, I do think Horikoshi is sincere in his apology, and whether he meant to do this or not, I guarantee he did not mean for it to upset people this much, and maybe it was just a clever reference. I don't think he saw this happening, obviously not. And no amount of threats that he's getting are ever justified, and the fake outrage from Western My Hero Academia fans is ridiculous, and it's absolute garbage. Do I think people on Twitter are overreacting? It's kind of hard to tell, right? I think people in the West that are My Hero Academia fans and throwing all this rage at Horikoshi, yeah, you guys are a bit much. But people in China and Korea and other Asian countries affected by this history, especially the publishers of this manga, I think they have every right to be upset about this. Their outrage is clearly justified. I really want to illustrate this and really drive it home how different the sentiment is between Chinese, Korean, and other Asian countries in regards to these events done by Japan in history than it is an American or a Western person viewing this. This is not the same as some mangaka naming a villain Pearl because he surprise attacks heroes and it's a reference to Pearl Harbor. I guarantee America could care less. There might be some veterans that are upset about this, but they're not reading manga anyway. It is not the same. The sentiment of people in Asian countries affected by this history, and especially people in China that I know and I've talked to, is 100 times greater. Anytime there's a reference to this history and it's in something that's popular, it's not that it's reopening old wounds, it's the wounds never closed, they never stopped bleeding, and it's throwing salt into them. If you'll indulge me, I'd like to tell you a personal story that perfectly illustrates why someone in the West tweeting at Horikoshi is ridiculous, but why someone in Asia, or who is Asian and whose ancestors were affected by these events in history, why their outrage is really justified, or if not justified, perfectly understandable. For those of you who don't know, I've lived in China multiple times. Now, one of these stints was when I was studying abroad in Nanjing. I stayed with a host family, and we used to go out on the weekends and explore the city, and they'd show me different things like museums and restaurants and those type of things. So one particular weekend, they took me to what's called the Nanjing Massacre Museum. So this is a museum dedicated to what happened during the rape of Nanjing or Nanking. Again, look that up, it's very horrifying. So the museum is interesting because you don't just jump from exhibit to exhibit. It slowly eases you in and leads you on a path to where it gets more severe. So by the end of it, your emotions are at their peak. And I'm going to leave a description in a pinned comment of what exactly the museum shows to people, because you can obviously look up what happened during that event, but the museum just captures it perfectly, and it's kind of hard to see. You can't really look up exhibits online, so I'm going to leave a description in a comment, and if you guys actually want to pause the video and read that and come back here, this will make more sense. But my host family, we went to the museum, we were slowly eased into this, some of the war history, and then things got pretty deep. And at the end of it, we all come out, and I'm not talking because of what I just saw, and I'll never forget, as long as I live, I'll never forget this. My host mom turned to me and said, "See, Japanese people are pure evil." And as a 20-year-old American boy in China, one doesn't really know how to respond to that. So I said, some Japanese people are evil, some Americans are evil, and some Chinese people are evil. Because I truly believe that the line between good and evil runs down the center of every human heart. Everyone has the capacity for good and evil. And that's where we left it. We kind of nodded and said, "Oh, okay." And I just knew that there was no way me, as a guest in China, as a guest to this family, was going to convince them that they shouldn't have a reason to have this sentiment towards people because of this history. As surely as they won't convince me that that sentiment is right. And I think this perfectly illustrates that it's one thing to be outraged, you know, by something stupid Horikoshi has done with a character, like increase the chest size of Nejire. That is ridiculous. But I hope this gives you a sense that we can't even fathom what some people feel about this event. And to say that all Chinese people or all Korean people or all people in Asia that are outraged by this, even Japanese people themselves that aren't proud of their history and what their government says about it, I think people need to understand that those people are 100% completely justified in being mad about this. So I hope that gives you a sense of just the disparity between how people in the West almost can't even relate to what happened during this event. If there's two lessons I want to take away from this controversy, it's one, Japanese people have actually been very supportive and reacted well to this. And I mean, they're outraged too. I think it sort of signifies a changing of the guard, or this younger generation that A, is not proud of that history, and 2, is not satisfied with what their government has done or not done in apologizing to countries like China and Korea and others that were affected by this. So I think it's great that people in Japan are standing in solidarity with the rest of the people in Asia that are mad about this. And number 2, it's a lesson that we should all know by now, but don't cry wolf. I think some people have the wrong idea about what's happening here because for weeks and months, Twitter stans have always cried wolf. They were upset when Horikoshi started to redeem Endeavor. They sent him death threats. They were upset when Bubble Girl had a tickle scene. They were upset when Nejire Hado's chest was increased just a tiny bit. So when something like this happens, a casual reader of My Hero Academia is like, oh, the Twitter stans are at it again. Because they always cry wolf and always cry outrage and fake outrage over all this negligible stuff. So I think we learned that that's a bad idea because sometimes there can be a real issue. And again, Horikoshi has apologized and I thank him for doing that, and I think he's sincere, and I think this will blow over and people will be appeased and they'll just change the name and move on with it. And let's not pretend it's the first manga that's ever had a controversy. So I think that's great, but people should really understand that this is a real issue and it's kind of highlighted by the medium. Japanese manga, it's published for Asia, you know. I don't know if there's an equivalent to the West having a movie that makes everyone outraged, but people do need to learn the lesson that these Twitter stans that just cry fake outrage, it really hurts us in the end because we can't talk about real issues like this. Okay, lesson number 3. Even though My Hero Academia and its author and editor made some mistakes here, and I believe they're sincere and it will blow over, even in a mistake, My Hero Academia is still making a social commentary. It shows that people are upset that Japan hasn't apologized for this. And My Hero Academia has always done this so well in the story about disenfranchised people or whatever, about villains or heroes. And I think if there's a silver lining here, it's that now, reading Shiga Maruta, more people know about the history of Unit 731 or what happened in Nanjing. And really, that's all we can ask for out of this. The name will be changed, but more people will be educated about this. So, thanks for watching. I know it's not my typical video. Be sure to like and comment down below. Do you agree with me? Are there feelings to be had in all this, or is a lot of it fake outrage? Do you think Horikoshi should change the name, and is that enough? Are they doing enough to appease people here and really rectify their mistake? And in general, what do you think about the controversy itself and the history that it brings up for people? Be sure to share on social media as well, since I do think this video will be demonetized. And if you like My Hero Academia content and sort of these news pieces, be sure to enroll at UA today by subscribing. And until next time, plus ultra.